It's only been a couple hours since Indiana put absolute belt to ass on Oregon in the Peach Bowl. An incredibly impressive performance from them. It's hard to imagine Dante Moore doesn't go back to school at this point. Now, I still think there's a world where he could be the number 2 overall pick to the Jets, but I think unless the Jets literally tell him they're going to take him with that pick, I think he probably goes back to school. He'll get an incredibly fat NIL check. He could really use another year of development as well. Super raw prospect. My opinion on him really hasn't changed after that game. I know he wasn't great. I know Oregon in general was terrible, but I wouldn't really attribute their loss to him, despite throwing a pick six on the opening play, despite fumbling that handoff, despite missing some throws here and there. I think Oregon is just poorly coached. They have an unlimited war chest. They have an unlimited number of 4 and 5 star recruits. They ball out in the transfer portal every single year as well. There's no excuses for why they should be losing these games in the playoffs every single year by numerous possessions. There's literally no reason besides coaching, and the coaching is bad. They make so many mistakes and shoot themselves in the foot so frequently, especially on offense, that you just don't see that level of play anywhere but maybe on Tuesdays watching the Maction. And honestly, that might be disrespectful to the Maction to throw Oregon in the conversation with them, because they are constantly behind schedule. They were fumbling snaps against Texas Tech, throwing interceptions. It's just not pretty. Just a mistake-filled game plan. And I would attribute that more to the coaching than I would to Dante Moore, who, again, is incredibly young, only 20 years old. You see the upside, even in a game where they lose multiple possessions, and maybe that's not fair. Maybe that's not fair to Dan Lanning, but that's my perspective on it. And again, I still think he could be the number 2 overall pick. If he isn't, things get really interesting for the Jets. The 2027 class is loaded. You maybe could argue trading back here, but who is really going to be willing to trade up? Obviously, you have some ballers like Ruben Bain Jr., who's been having one of the best college football playoffs from an edge rusher I can really remember from recent history. But there's arguments against selecting him as highly as, the number 2 overall pick. He has shorter arms than you'd like to see from a blue chip prospect. He maybe is a little bit too heavy. Maybe he doesn't have the bend or the quickness off the edge that you would see, from somebody like Abdul Carter, even from last year's draft class. So I'm not sure there really would be a team willing to trade up and give up a good amount of draft capital to move again into the spot. So I think Arvell Reese probably makes the most sense here. Caleb Downs, Ruben Bain, I think is in that conversation. But with a defensive-minded head coach, losing Quinnen Williams, losing Sauce Gardner, just having the season that the Jets did, they need a quarterback. And if they can't get one, I think it makes a lot of sense to draft a guy with an incredibly high ceiling like Arvell Reese, who is 6'4", 243, one of the most powerful defensive prospects I've seen in the last couple of years. He's really underrated in coverage as well. He can play off-ball linebacker. He really wasn't asked to rush the passer a ton at Ohio State, but I think the upside you could see at that spot is certainly there as well, and I think that would really be enticing to a lot of teams at the professional level. So Arvell Reese is really a Swiss Army knife for a defense, and again, for a defensive-minded head coach like Aaron Glenn, I think Reese makes the most sense. Caleb Downs, I think, can make a lot of sense as well. I think just positional value, it would surprise me maybe a little bit if he went number 2 overall, but I really wouldn't have a problem with it. I don't think that the safety play from the Jets was really that tremendous this year. Mansour Delane could be a sneaky number 2 overall pick as well. This guy was insane this year, really as good as it gets for a cornerback prospect. He's quick. He's 6 foot 190, maybe not the biggest player ever, but good size and plays bigger in my opinion. He's physical. He's technically gifted. He only got targeted, I believe, like 35 times all year, which is really impressive when you consider how often LSU's defense was on the field because of how terrible their offense was. So Mansour Delane really wouldn't surprise me either. Maybe Jordan Tyson. I don't think that wide receiver room is really as bad as people say it is. Mitchell has so much upside. He just can't really seem to hang on to the football. Garrett Wilson is one of the best receivers in the league. Mason Taylor had a strong rookie season at tight end. Breece Hall, obviously one of the better running backs in the league as well. So I think they have weapons on offense. They just need a quarterback. The offensive line is actually pretty good as well. Membu is one of the best rookies. They really had a home run selection with him last year out of Missouri. And then, speaking of right tackles, I'm going to give Spencer Fano out of Utah to the Arizona Cardinals. Who knows what they're going to do, right? New coach coming in, don't know who it is yet. Kyler Murray, is he going to be the quarterback? What's the deal? Regardless of who plays quarterback, you got to protect him. You got Paris Johnson at left tackle, one of the most underrated tackles in the league. You got that spot locked up for a long time coming, as long as he stays healthy. Lock up the other spot, Spencer Fano, super talented here. Pick number 4, we have the Tennessee Titans. I'm snap picking Ruben Bain right here. Pair him up with Ola Dejo, who had a tremendous start to his rookie season out of UCLA before getting injured. And then you got 2 youngsters off both edges that are going to be, really wreaking havoc on opposing quarterbacks, especially in the AFC South for years to come. Now, again, there are downsides to Ruben Bain, the arm length, the weight, maybe the lack of bend and quickness. He's a great football player. I'm a proponent of good football players. I think the measurables are a little overrated, and I understand the argument when you're selecting somebody with premium draft capital inside the top 5, inside the top 10, in the first round in general, but Ruben Bain's a good football player. I don't think you overthink that one. I think you could maybe argue wide receiver here as well. I've seen a lot of other people who do mock drafts, whether it's on Twitter, whether it's on YouTube, take Carnell Tate in the spot. And, I don't want Ohio State fans to beat me up because I kind of had this opinion on him earlier in the year as well. I didn't even have him being a first-round selection until a couple weeks into the season. Now, his draft stock definitely rose. He got a lot better throughout the season. But I'm a lot lower on Carnell Tate than most people. I can't believe people are mocking him inside the top 5. That is outrageous to me. Inside the top 10 is outrageous to me as well. I think he's a late first round selection. I would take Surratt over him. I would take Lemon over him, Tyson. I would take Denzel Boston. I would maybe even consider Concepcion and maybe even Chris Bell if he was healthy. And maybe Jacoby Lane as well. I am not high on Tate. I don't think he's bad, but the reason why I'm not in on Tate is because, one, he's not very good after the catch. Now, contested catch rate is one of the highest I've seen out of any receiver in this class, if not the highest. Drop rate 0.0%. He is a contested catch specialist, and he's a decent separator. I wouldn't say he's a great separator. He's not nearly as good as route running as somebody like Jordan Tyson. But what I saw against Miami just had me completely out on him. And I get it wasn't a great game all around from Ohio State, outside of Jeremiah Smith, who was incredible, by the way. But Carnell Tate, being a contested catch specialist guy, shying away from bullet passes over the middle of the field, 10 yards down the field, 10 to 15 yards down the field, shying away from those because of being scared of a team that was hitting really hard in that game. Miami was laying the wood over the middle of the field constantly. He was afraid. Let's just call a spade a spade. He was afraid of getting hit. He moved out of the way. That is not what I want from a guy who I'm thinking about taking possibly inside the top 5. And again, this is not a diss to Carnell Tate. I think he's an incredibly talented player. But we saw something similar happen to Brian Thomas. I think, he was the recipient of a hospital ball from Trevor Lawrence in the preseason. And that changed the entire trajectory, possibly, of his career. He had the yips this season. There's no doubt about that. And he had one of the best rookie seasons from a wide receiver we've ever seen. The talent looked like, or the ceiling, the talent, it looked absolutely through the roof. I think some people could argue he was a top 5 receiver heading into the season. And, he's merely really an afterthought on that team now. With Jacoby Myers coming over from the Raiders, Travis Hunter obviously got injured, but he was getting some work in the slot, starting to look really good as well. Parker Washington now, who maybe has taken Travis Hunter's spot. A lot of interesting things going on with the Jaguars, but Carnell Tate, man, I'm just out on him. I'm sorry. And again, I don't mean to offend anybody, but he's a late first round selection to me. I might have him going a little bit earlier in here. I'm trying to make this semi-realistic and then also add in some of my perspectives as well. So he might end up going early in the teens. We'll just see how this draft board shakes out here. Another note I want to make as well is with the Arizona Cardinals, I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be on the move here. I think Michael Wilson has shown the capability to be the alpha at the wide receiver position in that wide receiver room. And I think having Wilson and Marvin Harrison Jr. is honestly too much. I think you probably trade Marvin Harrison Jr. for maybe a 3rd round pick, maybe a 4th round pick. Not really my area of expertise in terms of trade value. You got Trey McBride as well. Would not surprise me at all to see them move on from Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison Jr. Would be interested to see where he ends up if that is the case. And I think I think that's going to happen, if not this year, at some point down the line. Michael Wilson is unbelievable. So good, so underrated. Had one of the best catches I've seen all season against the Rams. Really gave them all they could handle. Maybe could have pulled off the upset. They had the lead, I believe, late in the third quarter, if not early into the fourth. And then a huge catch from Michael Wilson got called back because of a holding. Wasn't a very good call, in my opinion, but that's nor here or there. At pick number 5, we have the New York Giants. I'm going Jordan Tyson here. I love Tyson. And yes, I am biased because I am a Sun Devil fan, but Jordan Tyson is easily my favorite player in this class. He is so good. And when people talk about him, again, I see a lot of people have Tate over him. I see a lot of people have Lemon over Tyson. I understand people having different opinions on players. I just don't know how you look at Jordan Tyson and you don't see superstar potential. One of the most fluid, really, athletes in general in this class. Such a smart route runner, explosive in his route running, a fantastic separator, easily the best separator in this class, in my opinion. He has the contested catch ability as well. Maybe not as good at that as Carnell Tate, but right there, he's, not the fastest in the world either, but he's a smart guy who's able to get behind defenses despite maybe a lack of straight vertical speed that some other players like Nick Harbor might have, for example. Not that I think Nick Harbor's actually going back to South Carolina. Barian Brown out of LSU, for example, some speedsters. Jordan Tyson, again, not the fastest, but seems fast, plays fast, good after the catch as well. An electric playmaker. I understand, the drawbacks or maybe the red flags that people would have with him. Mainly the injury history. Blew out his knee, I believe, his freshman year at Colorado. Broke his collarbone last year. Had the hamstring this year. He literally pulled his hamstring, I believe, against Texas Tech. I was at that game when he scored the touchdown and then played through the hamstring. It was incredible, man. He was literally limping all around the field. Had that 33-yard catch towards the end of the game to get them down near the goal line. They were able to punch it in, secure the victory, pull off the big-time upset over the Red Raiders. But he, I believe, had 10 catches for 105 yards and a touchdown versus arguably the best defense in the country. In my opinion, Texas Tech is the best defense in the country. And that's kind of the other red flag maybe, is that the Big 12 isn't really known for playing great defense. I think Arizona had a great pass defense. Obviously, he didn't play that game, but he did play against Texas Tech, was a huge reason, if not the biggest reason, why Arizona State was able to actually score in that game and win that football game. Obviously, the defense was great too, but I would stake any amount of credibility that I have, which is granted really not that much. I'm just a random guy who does this for fun and watches a ton of football in his free time. I would stake any amount of credibility I have on Jordan Tyson being a superstar in the league. I think he's got future All-Pro written all over him. And the Giants definitely need some pass catchers. I think Wan'Dale Robinson is solid in the slot. Slayton has the drop issues. I think Theo Johnson at tight end is underrated. I've seen some people mocking Sadiq to the Giants. I think that's kind of silly. I think Theo Johnson is definitely the tight end of the future for that team. He's certainly underrated in my opinion. And then Malik Neighbors, who I don't believe is going to play to start next season. He might not even play till midway through next season, if not even later. I've heard that the tear that he had was actually pretty bad. Again, that's all really speculation, but doesn't look good for Malik Neighbors. They're going to need somebody to be able to catch passes, especially from a young quarterback like Jackson Dart, if you want to continue to see development. I'm also curious to see what they do in terms of, hiring a head coach. Jordan Tyson, though, is the easy selection, in my opinion, at pick number 5. At pick number 6, this one's going to be a little bit surprising. I'm going to go with Caleb Lomu out of Utah. Caleb Lomu might be the most underrated player in this class, in my opinion. You look at the PFF grades, which, again, are never the end-all, be-all of a player. They never tell the whole story. They aren't great. I see superstar written all over this guy as well whenever I watch him play. He is so technically sound. He's a large human being. He's 6'6", 308. I would venture to say he's probably a little bit lighter. He could definitely put on some weight. He could definitely put on some muscle as well. I think that's the biggest drawback to him, is he's maybe a little bit weaker than you'd like to see, but he moves so well. He's technically gifted. I don't know why these PFF grades are the way they are. He is so good. Every time I watch Utah play, he impresses me more than Fano does. He plays the more important position as well, protecting, quarterbacks' blind sides. And there really aren't a lot of great left tackles in this class. You look at Caden Proctor, who is extremely raw as a prospect, by no means a pro-level day one starter. Like this guy, Caden Proctor is going to need a lot of work. He might not even end up being a left tackle at the next level. He might end up being a guard despite being 6'7". We'll talk more about him later. But Carter Smith, I think, could skyrocket up draft boards with how well Indiana is playing, how well they're protecting Mendoza. But Caleb Lomu is the obvious selection for the Cleveland Browns, who definitely need a lot of help offensively. I'm interested to see what they do. Shedeur Sanders, I believe, had the lowest QBR of any rookie quarterback in history. I think it was like 12 or 13, which is low. I do see some potential with Shedeur Sanders. I think he's playing behind one of the worst offensive lines, if not the worst offensive lines in the league. Obviously, they got rid of their coach, Stefanski, as well. He might end up being the Giants coach, speaking of that. But they need guys who can catch the football as well. Fannin had a great rookie season, but Fannin and Njoku both have drops issues. Judy has an effort issue and a drops issue. They need guys who can catch the football, so they need wide receiver help. They maybe need a quarterback, and they certainly need offensive line. I think they need 5 offensive linemen, 5 new ones. They're in cap hell as well. It's not looking great if you're a Cleveland Browns fan. I will say, they had a tremendous draft last year, arguably the best, though. It looks so good. Judkins, before he got hurt, was awesome. Fannin, again, had a great year, despite maybe some drops issues. Mason Graham had a slow start, but really had a great second half of the season, really caught fire there. So that Browns draft class was so good. I think there is maybe some upside there. Maybe there is a bright side to look at. Although if you're a Browns fan, let's just be honest. I hate to beat on a broken drum. Is that the saying? I actually don't know. I hate to kick a dead horse. I don't know the saying. I'm not that smart. But Caleb Lomu, obvious selection for me here. I would personally hate Maui Noah here. I know his stock is rising with Miami stock making the national championship. He's played really well. There's no doubt about that. I don't think Maui Noah is as good as maybe other people think he is. I think he's a later first-round selection, and I think he profiles better as a guard despite being 6'6" as well. I think he's just a mover in the run game. I think he lacks quickness. I think he lacks lateral quickness, which you're going to see a lot of at the next level. A lot of these, professional edge rushers have the bend that you don't really typically see in college, and they're going to be able to take advantage of that versus Maui Noah. I'm not saying he can't be a starting right tackle in the league. It's just I have my personal doubts about it. So despite a really strong college playoff, I think Maui Noah, to me, is a later first-round pick. I think he's probably a guard, maybe a long-term tackle with some more development, maybe develop some quickness, maybe some better technique. But at pick number 7, I'm going to go ahead. If you're the Washington Commanders, you have a couple different options. I think it has to be defense. David Bailey off the edge has some character concerns. I was at that Texas Tech, Arizona State game. He allegedly got into a confrontation with a cameraman after the game. So there are some character concerns here. The other thing that people talk about with David Bailey is maybe not being a 3-down edge, maybe more of a defensive, specialized defensive pass rusher. Okay, my brain is in shambles right now. It's currently 3 a.m. I wanted to get this out. But essentially what they're saying is, maybe he's only good for getting after the quarterback. Maybe not that great against the run. 9% run stop rate, 81.5 run defense grade. Again, PFF grades are not the entire story in most cases. So I don't think he's as bad against the run as people say he is. Again, as an ASU fan, I watched a lot of Texas Tech. I saw it in person. This guy is lightning quick. If getting after the quarterback is the only thing they can do, he does a damn good job of it. There's no doubt about it. Has a pretty deep bag. Again, great bend, lightning quick, plays with ferocity, but he's smart as well. If he loses, he's immediately getting those hands up in the pass lanes. Really a great player. I don't think you can go wrong with him at number 7. I think Caleb Downs can make some sense here as well, but I'm actually going to go with Mansour Delane here, who, again, was only targeted, I believe, 35 times throughout the entire season. They need corner help. You hate to see it if you're a Commanders fan. Taking Forbes over Gonzo. Forbes, not even on the team anymore. Having some success out in L.A. Sandstrel, I believe, is a good young corner for them, but Mansour Delane, you need a good outside corner, and Delane is locked down. I think he's NFL ready right out the gate. So good. At pick number 8, we have the New Orleans Saints. Talking about good, man, Tyler Shuck. Wow, what a surprise. You got to be so excited if you're a Saints fan. To me, and probably a lot of Saints fans, I think they were pretty realistic about the season they were likely going to have, probably being the worst team in the entire league, probably ending up with the number one overall pick. And then you start Chuck about halfway through the season. I mean, you couldn't ask for more from a 26-year-old who a lot of people mocked when he got drafted last year, including me. We've all seen the clips, I feel like, of him underhanding a pass or two right to defenders, and you're just like, what is this guy thinking? Is he out of his mind? It's like Mac Jones all over again. It's like Josh Allen, maybe without the elite athleticism early on in his career when he had all the turnovers. He's gotten a little bit better about that, obviously, winning MVP last year and then being in that conversation again this year. But Tyler Shuck is so good. So good. And I think taking him in the second round, well, I thought it was a reach, but clearly it isn't. And again, I get that he's old. I get that maybe the ceiling isn't that high in terms of his athleticism. And again, his age as well. But dude, so good. So good. And he was throwing to literal Amazon workers towards the end of the season. I could put a gun to your head in game. I don't want to get banned here. I'm not actually going to do that. This is a hypothetical situation. And tell you or ask you to name one receiver or one running back in their week 18 game against the Falcons. You couldn't do it. I promise you couldn't do it. Olave's had the concussion concerns as well. They trade Shaheed. Neal, one of the more underrated running backs in last year's draft class, he got hurt as well. Jawan Johnson is solid at tight end, but receiver-wise, not much there when Olave isn't on the field. Mekhi Lemon makes the most sense. I think pretty similar to Carnell Tate, in my opinion. Just 4 inches shorter, 5'11", not a big dude, but plays big, plays larger than his body, not going to wow you at the combine, not going to blow by you. Again, not taller than you, not stronger than you, just a smart football player who can play ball. And when you think of receivers like that, you think of Puka Nacua, you think of Jackson Smith and Jigba, two guys who are arguably the first and second best wide receivers in the league this season. If not overall, they've been so incredibly good. And again, I'm just a huge proponent of drafting good football players. Mekhi Lemon, Ruben Bain, maybe guys on paper that don't have every desirable measurable, but I have no doubt in my mind these guys are going to be effective. And not only effective, but great players at the next level. Don't overthink it. Don't get hyper-focused on their physical traits. Draft guys who are good and will be good. Pick number 9. It's a little bit more simple than it sounds, or it's a little bit more complicated than it sounds, I think. It's really not that simple. If it was, we wouldn't be doing mock drafts. There wouldn't be subjective opinions on a lot of these players. At pick number 9, though, we have Caleb Downs going to the Kansas City Chiefs. I think this makes a ton of sense, and this is really a match made in heaven for Spagnuolo and the Kansas City Chiefs, who certainly need defensive line help. I think Chris Jones kind of had a down year. You maybe saw a lack of effort and motivation at times. He's certainly towards the tail end of his career. I know they signed Karlaftis to a pretty decently sized contract, and any Chiefs fan that I've talked to or seen talk to other people, really not a huge fan of him in terms of what he's brought to the team. They don't really generate a ton of organic pressure off the edges or really up the middle unless Chris Jones is able to make something happen. A lot of their pressure comes from these blitz packages that Spagnuolo is able to dial up, and I think Caleb Downs could absolutely be a vital part of that. He can also play as a slot corner. He could play in the box as almost like a linebacker. He could play up top as well. He is a Swiss Army knife. So talented, maybe the most talented player in this class. Again, really just positional value. Could have him slipping, really all the way to around pick 9 or 10, maybe even slightly later. With Dante Moore, again, likely to go back to school, though, I see Caleb Downs still being a top 10 pick. And really, again, I argued that he could be the selection for the Jets at number 2. That wouldn't surprise me either. At pick number 10, I'm going to have them select David Bailey out of Texas Tech. I was at that ASU and Texas Tech game. I think there are some red flags in terms of character concerns for David Bailey. Allegedly, he got into a confrontation with a photographer after the game that I'm talking about against the Sun Devils in Tempe. I've heard of some possible alleged other character concerns as well. Nothing major, I would say. And I think you can overlook some of this stuff for how much talent he brings to a defensive line. Lightning quick, has a deep bag, a smart player as well, gets his hands in passing lanes very frequently. I think maybe the thing that people don't love outside of the possible character concerns is I guess a question of his ability to play all 3 downs. Maybe not the greatest against the run. A 9% run stop rate and an 81.5 run defense grade is pretty solid. But again, PFF grades don't necessarily tell the whole story. I think he's a little bit better against the run than most people will give him credit for. And I think there's still some development there. But I think that's, again, really maybe the big question surrounding David Bailey, where somebody like, Arvell Reese or somebody like Ruben Bain, a bit more powerful, maybe not as deep of a bag, maybe not as quick, but those guys can play all three downs. Can David Bailey? Again, that's the question. Pick number 11, we have the Miami Dolphins, who the secondary is absolutely depleted. I love Avion Terrell, maybe the most technically gifted corner in this class. He's just a little undersized. I think pick 11 might be a reach. And I know after going on that spiel about draft good football players, I'm like, oh, well, now he's undersized. Maybe that makes me a hypocrite. 5'11", 180. You got Jamal McCoy, who is incredibly good as well. Just didn't play this season because of injury. There's other good corners. Colton Hood, Cisse had some hit and miss games. I love Abney as well. Keontae Scott, his stock has risen tremendously. A lot of different options here. I think what I'm going to do here for the Miami Dolphins, though, is give them another receiver to help out a young quarterback in Quinn Ewers, who I would imagine is probably the starter next season. Interested to see what the Dolphins do in terms of quarterback, and then also at the head coach position, offensive coordinator. But I love Denzel Boston. I think he's so incredibly good. He's 6'4", 209. He's a physical receiver, but look at the grade versus man coverage. He can separate. He's got a low drop rate, really high contested catch rate, so he plays like a big physical receiver, but he can also get open versus man, which is not something you see all the time. I think that was really the big knock on McMillan coming out of Arizona, and we saw what a year he had for the Panthers, maybe despite ability to separate consistently and by a large amount. I mean, again, McMillan, great season, probably going to be the offensive rookie of the year, but Denzel Boston, I am high on him. I'm taking him over Tate as well. At pick number 12, we have the Dallas Cowboys. I could see this possibly being Jeremiah Love. I just feel like if they didn't take Hampton last year, they're probably not going to take a running back this year. Maybe you think Love is better than Hampton. He probably is. I think Love is probably somewhere between Hampton and Genty in terms of a prospect. I think some people might even have him as a better prospect than Genty, which would be a little surprising to me. But I think the Cowboys just need so much help on defense that Love would be a surprising selection. Keldrick Folk off the edge, pair him up with Ziriaku, who had a pretty good season as a rookie for the Cowboys off the edge. I think linebacker makes the most sense here, though. Sonny Styles out of Ohio State. Didn't really have a terrific game against Miami. Mark Fletcher got the best of him once or twice, but so fast for a guy who's 6'5", 243. This is an athletic unicorn right here. He's a hard hitter. He's constantly involved in every single play, and he's also smart. You don't typically see that combination of size, speed, and then football IQ as well. It's pretty rare. And I think we've seen this over the years. Isaiah Simmons is the most obvious example. A guy who is just unbelievably athletically gifted, really an alien on the football field, looks like a man running around a bunch of small school children, gets to the next level, tries safety, tries linebacker, doesn't really work out, just isn't a scheme fit, bounces around the league for a couple of years, and then, retires. We've seen many such cases. Nick Imanwori was maybe a guy who profiled that way as well, an athletic freak. Did he have the football IQ? He has excelled so well in Seattle. I think maybe that's largely due to their defensive scheme. Their defense is so well coached. But he's having a really good rookie season. I think you could make an argument for him as defensive rookie of the year. So I think a lot of this is really scheme fit, and I think that's the case for most players in this class, right? It's really all about going to the right system. Are the Dallas Cowboys the right system for Sonny Styles? I'm not sure. I don't know who their new defensive coordinator is going to be, but they need a linebacker. They need a commander in the middle of their defense. And I think Sonny Styles could be that eventually down the road. A lot of potential, extremely high ceiling, but maybe not a very high floor for Styles, but definitely smarter than I think people will give him credit for, because again, I think he profiles as one of these safeties, linebackers that we've seen in the last decade that, again, hasn't really worked out. But pick number 13, we have the LA Rams. I'm going to go with Carnell Tate here. I think he He's not as good as a separator as Devontae Adams, obviously, but great contested catch specialist. That's what Devontae Adams brings to that Rams team, especially down near the goal line or in the end zone, especially towards the tail end of his career, or maybe some of his physical traits have kind of fallen off a cliff. Maybe not fallen off a cliff, but definitely deteriorated. And you bring somebody in who again has a very high ceiling. I have my concerns about Carnell Tate. But with 2 first-round selections, it's hard to imagine the Rams don't select Devontae Adams' replacement, give some help to draw some attention away from Puka Nacua if Devontae Adams doesn't return next year, obviously towards the tail end of his career as well. But Carnell Tate would definitely make a lot of sense here. And at pick number 14, we have the Baltimore Ravens. Now, I've heard from Ravens fans, I haven't done too much research on this, but apparently Matabike, I believe he has a neck injury. That's what held him out this season. Super young player, super talented. Apparently, he might not ever play again because of this injury. That's what but several Ravens fans have told me. I don't know, again, if that's true or not. But either way, they definitely need to become more physical. And Peter Woods has an incredibly high ceiling. Not even 21 years old, 6'3", 310, freakishly athletic, can do a lot on the interior, can get after the quarterback, can also stop the run. Not a lot of guys like that really in any draft class. They use him. Clemson does down near the goal line at fullback. They'll throw him the ball. They'll hand it off to him. That's how athletic he is. And again, super high ceiling. The Ravens, growing up, they were always a team that was more physical than every other team that they played, and that is not the case. They are one of the softest teams in the league. They need to build in the trenches. They need to get guards, 2 new guards probably at some point in this draft class. Or maybe through free agency. They also need to improve their defensive line. They need some edge rushers as well to be able to get after opposing quarterbacks. A lot of different needs for that team. They just need to stop being bitches. And I'm sorry to any Ravens fans watching this, but you would probably agree with me. Maybe that's a harsh way to say it, but pick number 15, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You got to protect Baker Mayfield. He had a really strong start to the season. A lot of people were, touting him as probably the MVP frontrunner, and probably deservedly so, but really had a bad second half to the season. That interior of the offensive line wasn't strong. They weren't able to run the ball as consistently as they probably would have liked to. They weren't protecting Baker. They need to give him more time. And yeah, I don't know. I feel like Baker just kind of got exposed. I was never really that low on Baker. I always thought he was, well, not always, but he's been pretty good for the Bucs. And I've seen, certain pundits, I guess you would call them. Maybe it was Theo Ash. I don't want to 100% confidently say who it was, but I definitely know that somebody who has a pretty large voice in terms of the NFL draft in the mock draft community was just so low on Baker Mayfield compared to everybody else. He's like, no, this guy sucks. He's not good. He's overrated. Everybody's like, dude, like this guy is the MVP front runner halfway through the season, and then it turns out he might be right. Maybe Baker Mayfield isn't as good as we thought he was. I'm not going to jump to any conclusions. Again, I think that offensive line was just beat up this year. The wide receivers were beat up as well. There really wasn't a whole lot of consistency with that offense, and I think that played a big role in maybe why Baker Mayfield didn't have the strongest second half of a season ever. So pick number 16, we have the New York Jets, who obviously took Arvell Reese with the second overall pick. I'm going to have them select Ty Simpson in this case, which, again, you could just select a different position in need, which the Jets certainly do have quite a few of those, and then hold out for, quarterback in next year's draft class, Arch Manning. There's a lot of good quarterbacks. Dante Moore obviously could be, a quarterback in next year's draft class as well. The 2027 draft class looks pretty incredible on paper, but we saw what happened to this year's draft class. A lot of guys who we thought were going to be top picks, like Garrett Nussmeier, for example, didn't end up being top picks. Drew Aller, Cade Klubnik, just quarterback examples there. So, things can change all the time. You can't just say, well, Arch Manning's going to be there. Dante Moore is going to be there. We're going to obviously suck if we don't have a quarterback, and we'll just pick one of them next year. You can't really rely on that. That's not really an effective draft strategy or team building strategy in general. And I think Ty Simpson is actually pretty underrated. He's not great under pressure, and he had some really bad games, Oklahoma, Indiana, Georgia. But I do think he is underrated. I think Alabama sucks. I don't think they were very well coached. I think the offensive line was trash in pass protection. It wasn't consistent at the very least. They had no run game. It's hard to be a quarterback when you can't run the ball at all. And when your offensive line doesn't really block very well for you. And then when your receivers drop every other pass, that doesn't help either. Ryan Williams regressed a ton. Ty Simpson had no help. No help. So I wouldn't judge him based on a couple bad games. I think he is capable of making big-time throws. I think he's capable of being a good quarterback at the next level. Do the Jets have the system in place to develop him and make sure that happens? No, probably not. Probably not. But they do need a quarterback, and I do think Ty Simpson gets more flack than he probably deserves. At pick number 17, I'm going to go Caden Proctor here. Again, another alien here. 6'7", 366, pretty quick as well. Barely even 20 and a half. He probably needs to lose some weight. He's definitely vulnerable to lightning quick edge rushers, which again, there's going to be a lot of those at the next level, at least compared to the collegiate level. I think he's got versatility to him, though. I think he's got incredibly high upside because of how athletic he is. I think he could be a guard. I think he could be Detroit's long-term solution at left tackle with Taylor Decker coming towards the end of his career as well. The interior offensive line and the offensive line in general, though, for the Lions was bad. Sewell had a down year. Ratledge, I think, is probably their long-term center, maybe. They would need a replacement at guard, so maybe you play Proctor at guard until Decker retires. You kick him out. Maybe you find a different answer at guard. Regardless, I think Proctor offers upside. I think he offers flexibility. He just needs to lose a little bit of weight. And if any team's going to know how to use him, I think it's probably the Lions. They could probably use him as a gadget guy, too, and throw the ball to him and stuff on screens like Alabama did a few times this year as well. That would be fun to watch. At pick number 18, I know this is late in the draft, but I don't know where else Jeremiah Love would go. Again, I don't think the Chiefs take him at 9. I think they have too many other needs, especially if Caleb Downs is available or somebody like David Bailey. Maybe to the Cowboys at 12, but again, I think they have more pressing needs on defense, obviously. The Vikings are really the best fit for Jeremiah Love, in my opinion. A pretty solid offensive line, a young quarterback that definitely probably needs to rely on a good run game, good weapons as well on offense, really well schematically coached defense. So Jeremiah Love definitely makes a lot of sense for the Vikings if he falls to them. That's a snap pick if he does there, obviously. Super talented, though. I'm interested to see where he goes, no doubt about it. At pick number 19, we have the Carolina Panthers, who certainly need a linebacker. I just think with Sonny Styles off the board, they maybe look to offense. And Kenyon Sadiq is so incredibly gifted, a really underrated run blocker as well. The only real drawback to him, in my opinion, is maybe the size, 6'3", maybe a little bit shorter than some of the tight ends you see nowadays. Not really a big deal. 6'3" is still a pretty large human being and totally fine. But the drop rate is definitely alarmingly high at almost 12%. Makes some incredible catches, incredible acrobatic catches, but also drops some easy ones. Not something you necessarily love to see, but you probably put up with it for, again, the upside that he brings. He's a ferocious run blocker as well, and I know they drafted Jatavion Sanders. I don't even really know if he plays much for him, though. I think you could argue they need a wide receiver. PFF certainly seems to think that they need a receiver. Obviously, McMillan had a great year. Leggett really hasn't, lived up to his first-round selection. Coker is solid. So I think tight end makes the most sense for him. I've had some Panthers fans get mad at me for that before, but I like Sadiq to Carolina. At pick number 20, we have, once again, the Dallas Cowboys. I'm going to go with Dylan Thieneman, safety out of Oregon. Pretty good safety class. Caleb Downs, obviously, Thieneman, Halsey out of LSU as well. Some other guys here like Emmanuel McNeil Warren. I love Genesis Smith out of Arizona. Maybe not as physical as you'd like to see. Really high missed tackle rate. Not really great in run defense, but in pass defense, super smart, great instincts. Maybe put some weight on him, some extra pounds, and he could be a star at the next level. Definitely look out for him. Another player at Arizona I really like, and I mean this because I am a Sun Devil. Tradan Stukes, I believe is how you pronounce his name. Tradan Stukes. This guy is fucking nice too. 6'2", large frame, 200, so he's physical. He had 4 picks. Some of the best catches I've seen, not only from corners but from wide receivers all year as well. This guy's super, super underrated. At pick number 21, though, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers. Interested to see what they do. I imagine this is Aaron Rodgers last year Will Howard could very well be the starting quarterback. Maybe, Malik. I'm interested. I'm interested to see where Malik Willis goes. I think Tyler Huntley could be a serviceable bridge quarterback for a team as well. Definitely some question marks here. Obviously, with them making the playoffs, I think they could easily upset the Texans as well. I might look stupid if you guys watch this next week and they lose to the Texans by 100, but I think they could pull off the upset. You know, was Tomlin going to be fired if they lost the game to the Ravens, which they probably should have if Luke didn't miss that pretty easy kick, I would say. Harbaugh ended up being the one getting fired. So interested to see what happens. Maybe if they get blown out versus the Texans, Tomlin's on his way out as well. But a lot of question marks surrounding this team. They need wide receiver help. Metcalf got in an altercation with the fan, prior to the Lions game, missed the last 2 games of the season, and it looked rough out there. Scotty Miller running routes, Valdez-Scantling running routes. He's been on a million different teams. You need some guys who can catch the football regardless of who's the quarterback, and KC is lightning in a bottle. Again, drop rate a little bit higher than you like to see, but good contested catch rate, lightning quick, electric playmaker. Pick number 22, we have the LA Chargers. And I believe I mentioned this earlier, but Maui Noah, I think profiles better as a guard. Interior offensive line has not been great for the Chargers. The health of their tackles has not been great, obviously. Joe Alt and Slater both going down during the season. You got to protect Herbert. This team has been so injury riddled ever since Herbert has gotten there. I honestly feel for him. I don't feel for him right now because as a Patriots fan, I hope we beat the shit out of him Sunday night. But definitely need to lock up the trenches really on both sides of the ball. I think, in later rounds, they probably look for defensive line help as well with Khalil Mack coming towards the end of his career. Pick number 23, offensive line could certainly be in play. Defensive line could certainly be in play for the Philadelphia Eagles. Jermod McCoy, again, super talented, maybe the most talented corner in this class, and that's saying something. There's some really good corners in this class. He just didn't play this year. I'm going Avion Terrell, so mechanically gifted. This makes a ton of sense. Terrell, Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, 3 corners would be so locked down it's not even funny. And then maybe in the later rounds, draft some defensive line depth. And we're talking about a powerhouse on defense, really a defense similar, to the Eagles defense last year. That helped that helped them win the Super Bowl, dominate Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, and really every other team on their path there. And honestly, their defenses look pretty elite this year as well. Obviously, I think their biggest weakness is the opposite outside corner of Quinyon Mitchell, who's had a great year. But, regardless of who that's been, it's been a couple different guys. It hasn't been great. So I like Avion Terrell there. Pick number 24, we have the Buffalo Bills. Keldrick Falk here. Could be an early selection, could be a late first round selection. Didn't really produce statistically, but in terms of, again, athletic profile, there's not many guys in this class, or really any class, that have the physical traits that he does. 6'6", 285, powerful, pretty fast for his size as well. Again, just doesn't have the stats. And we've seen guys like this produce and not produce at the next level. Danielle Hunter didn't really have the sack numbers in college. Showed out at the Combine, one of the premier edge rushers in the NFL right now. Stewart last year for the Bengals didn't really have a great year. I could maybe attribute that more to the Bengals organization than him as a player, but we've seen it go both ways. I think it's a larger gamble, than somebody like Ruben Bain, who again maybe doesn't have the traits that Falk does, but produces at the collegiate level that I think will produce at the professional level as well. Pick number 25, we have the Chicago Bears defensive line. Easy selection here. I'm going TJ Parker out of Clemson. A lot of Clemson selections here. I think Klubnik, I'm not going to say that. I think Klubnik could be a second round selection though. I think he could sneak his way back up into the second round. He had a pretty strong second half of the season, again, despite Clemson just being ass in general, but he's got really all the traits you look for in a professional quarterback. So yeah, I would not be surprised to see him sneak up into the second round. I was going to say maybe tail end of the first, but that's probably a little too rich even for my blood. At pick number 26, we have the San Francisco 49ers. Again, is Carter Smith, I mean, he's got what it takes on paper. He's played well in the college football playoff. We'll definitely get a better sense of how good he is against Miami, who obviously has one of the best pass rushers in the country. Ruben Bain, Mesidor coming off both edges. Excited to watch Carter Smith, but I think if he keeps Mendoza clean in that game, he could very well end up being a first-round selection. If it isn't Carter Smith, I wouldn't mind seeing them select a safety. Halsey out of LSU, for example. We're going Carter Smith here, tackle out of Indiana. Again, those player stocks have to be drastically rising. Pick number 27, we have the Houston Texans, who, again, I think are starting to see some more consistency with their offensive line. I think they're starting to do a better job of protecting CJ Stroud. Now, obviously, I did say I think there is a likelihood of an upset between the Steelers and the Texans, and I think a big part of why the Steelers would be able to beat the Texans, if they were able to do so, is getting pressure on Stroud with their strong defensive line, obviously. So if that was the case, if the Texans did lose, they weren't able to protect Stroud. I do like Vega out of Penn State guard. Definitely got to improve that interior offensive line. Ursery's been playing really well for them at left tackle. I think defensive tackle could make a lot of sense here as well. Amari Washington, Kristen Miller, Kaden McDonald, more of a run-stopping specialist, whereas Kristen Miller profiles more as somebody like Peter Woods, for example, that can also get after the quarterback. Amari Washington, I know people really love his upside. I just think the floor is really low for a player like that. I like Lee Hunter out of Texas Tech, 6'4", 330, a Goliath of a human being, but can also get after the quarterback. He's got a bit of a bag on him. He's got some pass rush moves, and I think he could be a sneaky first-round pick. Go watch him play. He had some really nice plays against Oregon, some tackles for loss. So I love the way Lee Hunter plays. And maybe that's a product of being on a defensive front seven that's as good as Texas. Jacob Rodriguez at linebacker, Romello Height, and then, obviously David Bailey coming off the edges. But I think Lee Hunter is a really underrated aspect of why that defense is and was as good as it is. At pick number 28, we have the Cleveland Browns up once again. I'm going Elijah Surratt out of Indiana, who has easily cemented himself as a first-round pick, in my opinion. And I would love for the Raiders to maybe make a move into the late first round before the Browns or maybe one of these other teams that need a receiver. The Patriots could take Surratt as well. I mean, Surratt would be a great fit in New England. I could definitely see that working. I definitely see a lot of parallels between Indiana and New England with the culture they're trying to build, I think, between Vrabel and Cignetti maybe, or at least the culture that I think, they'd like to build. Obviously, there's been some character concerns and off-the-field drama with certain Patriots players that I'm not going to dive too much into because that's not what this video is about. But at pick number 29, we have the LA Rams, who I think if Simpson is still on the board, I could see them taking Simpson. I don't think there's really a quarterback, again, worthy of a first-round pick here. I think Chambliss is trying to go back to college. I don't know what the deal is there, but he's just undersized. He's a great player, but he's up there in age as well. Mateer after the injury just hasn't been the same player. Beck has had a solid playoff, but just not a first-round pick in my opinion. Klubnik, again, really would be the guy here, possibly being a sneaky first-round pick. But with Carnell Tate here, I'm going to have them select Jermod McCoy. Definitely could use a corner. At pick number 30, we have the New England Patriots. My Patriots, obviously. Edge rusher is absolutely a need for us, but if we take a look at edge here, there's not anybody I love. Mesidor is an absolute monster. I just don't really see him being a first-round pick. He doesn't have a very high run stop rate. Great run defense grade. Electric pass rusher, 21% pass rush win rate, but he's up there in age as well. Zion Young out of Missouri, another really good option here. I like Joshua Josephs out of Tennessee. I think he's underrated. Cassius Howell, I'm not a fan. 3.1% run stop rate. Great pass rusher. Didn't really have a strong end to his season. Definitely undersized. And I know I said draft good football players, and he is a good football player. I don't see him being a first-round pick. I personally wouldn't want him on my Patriots. I think we need a long-term linebacker, commander of the defense, and a guy who, again, I think would mesh really well with Vrabel. A guy who's a commander of the defense, leads by example. Jacob Rodriguez, great hands. Some of the best hands I've seen from a linebacker. 6'1", 235, so really not an athletic specimen compared to somebody like Sonny Styles, but really high IQ. Again, great hands and can do a lot. Can stop the run. Great coverage linebacker as well. One of the best in the country, no doubt about it. And I think if Jacob Rodriguez doesn't go to the Patriots here, I think the Broncos could easily select him as well. We got the Broncos here at pick number 31. I'm going to go linebacker anyway. I'm going to go Anthony Hill out of Texas. I know CJ Allen, some people like him. I think Hill just has a much higher ceiling. He does have the athletic tools that maybe somebody like Jacob Rodriguez doesn't. 6'3", 238, not even 21. Super quick. He had a really nice interception against Georgia in that game. He's really good, and I think he can be really good, especially when he's surrounded by as much talent on defense as the Broncos have. And the pick number 32, Seattle Seahawks, this one in my opinion is Zion Young. I think it is Joshua Josephs, or I think you get an offensive tackle here. An offensive tackle that could be converted to guard or guard like Vega out of Penn State, kick him to right guard. He has a little experience playing there. I think right guard is a big need. I think keeping Sam Darnold is paramount. I think if the Seahawks do lose, maybe they could win the Super Bowl. Who knows? Who even knows who's going to win the Super Bowl at this point? But I think if the Seahawks do lose, it's going to be because Sam Darnold makes mistakes, has turnovers, and it's because he gets pressured from the interior offensive line. I know Seahawks fans really like Zabel. I don't know. Every time I watch the Seahawks play, I'm not really impressed by Zabel. I think he draws a ton of penalties. I mean, I don't know. I mean, obviously, he's going to be there at least for next year probably as well. I know Seahawks fans like him. I don't see it. But I know we can all agree on the fact that Bradford, I believe, is the right guard. I'm drawing a blank right now. It's 3:40 in the morning. Sorry. He's not the answer there. So edge rusher or guard, in my opinion, for the Seattle Seahawks, who have had an incredibly impressive season. They definitely surpassed my expectations and probably most people's expectations as well. But I'm excited to see how the playoffs unfold. I'm excited to see how the national championship unfolds. If you guys agree or disagree with any selection that I made, feel free to let me know in the comments below.